Right. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, when the world was a very different place to the way the world is today, when then was then and now is now, and the twain shall never meet, except in storytelling. She was very fed up. In fact, she was so incredibly fed up with being stuck in the house that she was getting seriously depressed. She just never got out. Never. Not a chance. There was always something to do. There was the washing and the cooking and the cleaning. And then there were her two sisters to look after. And her two sisters were so demanding. I mean, they were seriously demanding sisters. They were much older than her. And so she was expected to do everything for them and to look after them. But this had been going on for months and months and months, ever since her father had remarried. And she literally had not been outside, and she really would have loved to have had a little bit of space, been able to get out and maybe make some decisions about her own life for herself. No chance. Things were about to get worse. It just so happened that an invitation arrived. And this invitation had been sent from the local duke, who had a son who was 21. And of course, what you do when your son is 21, you have a party. And so he had invited all the dignitaries, all the wealthy people, all the people in large houses to come to this ball. And that was really the beginning of the worst bit of her troubles, because her two sisters had to get themselves organized. So they needed dress designers, they needed hairdressers, they needed people who put those large eyelashes on, you know, and then they needed to have their nails done. And they also needed to have shoes made for them. And amongst all this, the poor girl had to do all the cleaning and the cooking and the washing and everything else as well. And then there was one day when the two horrible sisters decided they would pick some strawberries and make some strawberry jam. And they decided to walk off in the middle of this process of boiling the strawberry jam. And you know what happens to strawberry jam? It goes all over the stove. So poor, as you have probably realized by now, Cinderella had to clean up the stove. She never had a moment's peace. And as the people arrived to talk about their hair and their dresses and the different colours and the shoes they might have to wear, and then the dresses had to be made and then there had to be fittings, and then the sisters had to lie back and have all this therapy, you know, sort of eye masks and eye things, and then they had to have their toes and nails done. And as it got closer and closer, poor Cinderella, she was just exhausted. She was so fed up. She was completely exhausted. And this went on, and it got closer and closer to the day of the ball. And on the day of the ball, of course, Cinderella was up at 4 a.m, cooking, cleaning, and then the sisters got up. And of course, their dresses had to be fitted and their hair had to be absolutely perfect. So the hairdressers had to come, because of course they couldn't come except on the day of the ball. I mean, that would be completely ridiculous. They'd had their nails painted and they'd done all their therapy and they'd had all their yoga and they'd had their wrinkles removed, you know, Botox and all that. And so they were looking as good as anyone possibly could look, because the sisters felt, and this was the most important thing, and it used to drive Cinderella mad, they talked endlessly about marrying a rich man, preferably a prince, or at least a duke, or anywhere a baronet, or something like that. And he had to be incredibly rich. And of course, then they would be able to spend the rest of their lives doing nothing, except titivating themselves, putting on dresses, and going to dinner, and talking gobbledygook. So that was their main aim in life. And this was their main moment for absolutely achieving that aim, by arriving at the ball looking so incredible in their incredible dresses with their incredible nails and incredible hairdress, that they would attract a prince or a baronet, or maybe the prince or the duke's son. And so it was the only thing that was important to them. And Cinderella thought about this. She thought about it quite deeply. And it completely disgusted her. It so disgusted her that when it got to the point where the two sisters got into their carriage to go off to the ball, Cinderella just threw herself down in the only armchair there was in the kitchen, and the cat jumped onto her lap. It was pretty much where they spent the end of every day. And she shut her eyes. And as she shut her eyes, she began to dream. And in her dream, she saw freedom. She saw a world. And she was just wallowing in this dream when suddenly, out of nowhere, this woman appeared in her kitchen. Strange woman. She had a sort of scarf around her head and a tiny little knot, and she had a handbag. And she opened her handbag with some difficulty. She managed to open it, and out of the handbag she pulled a wand. Cinderella looked at this wand and she thought, oh no, not a magic wand. God's sake, what's she going to do now? So the woman said to her, I am your fairy godmother, and I am going to wave my magic wand over you, and I am going to give you the most wonderful dress. Cinderella thought, And sure enough, she waved her magic wand. And Cinderella was suddenly encased in the most ghastly, tight, incredibly, well, it was a beautiful dress. And it was covered in sequins and God knows what else, and glittered, and a bit of an Alice Templey, really. And then she suddenly looked at her feet, and her fairy godmother had waved over her feet, and they had nail varnish on them, and they looked quite gorgeous because she was normally pretty filthy. And she had glass slippers on. And she found that was very odd because she thought glass would be terribly uncomfortable. If you ever worn glass slippers, of course, you would know about this. But she looked down at her feet, but they were comfortable glass slippers. She thought, how strange, they must have been made for me. And then the fairy godmother said, do not worry. Well, by this time, Cinderella had sort of given up worrying, you know, the last few months of worrying. So the fairy godmother waved her magic wand yet again, and she said, now, she said, you will go to the ball. And outside you will find a coach waiting for you. Be pulled by 4 white horses, and there will be 2 coachmen. And Cinderella thought, oh, no, bloody hell. I don't even like people. Oh, have I got to go to a ball? And don't forget, said the fairy godmother, that I have given you this. This is my great gift to you. I am your fairy godmother. God, Cinderella. Anyway, she left. There outside was this magnificent coach, far nicer than the ones her sisters had gone in. I mean, this was a glittering coach with white. It was painted white and had a coat of arms on it. I mean, it really did look special. 4 white horses, for God's sake. So she opened the coach door and slightly unwillingly, she got into the coach. There she sat, and she trundled through the town, and she thought, and she thought, and she thought. And then she knocked on the side of the coach, said, stop, stop. And the coach ground to a halt. And she opened the door, and she got out of the coach. And she walked all the way back home. And when she got home, she took off her fine dress. She took off her glass slippers. She ruffled up her hair, which had magically become quite superb. And then she put on her old clothes. She packed a little bag. She opened the front door. And she left. And you know, she never looked back. Thank you.
That was great fun. An alternative Cinderella. That was wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. That was